Namo Shimdai Krishna Stai Bhutale Samadhi Bhaktivedanta Swami Devane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Bhajani Nirvase Srinivadi Bhaschita Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is the 8th canto, chapter 3, Gajendra's Prayers of Surrender. This is text number 13. Chaitra Gyaya Namas Tubhyam Sarvaryakshaya Sakshine Purushayatma Mulaya Mula Prakritaye Namaha Chaitragaya Namastubhyam Sarvaryakshaya Sakshine Purushayatma Mulaya Mula Prakritaye Namaha Chaitragyaya Namastubhyam Sarvaryakshaya Sakshine Purushayatma Mulaya Mula Prakritaye Namaha Chaitragyaya Namastubhyam Sarvaryakshaya Chakshine Purushayatma Mulaya Mula Prakritaye Namaha Vaishnavis. Chaitragyaya, unto the one who knows everything of the external body. Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances. Tubhyam, unto you. Sarva, everything. Aryakshaya, who are superintending, managing. Sakshine, who are the witness. Paramatma, or Antaryami. Purushaya, the Supreme Person. Atmamulaya, who are the original source of everything. Mula Prakritaye, unto the Purusha avatar, the origin of Prakriti and Pradhana. Namaha, I offer my respectful obeisances. Translation. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the Supersoul, the superintendent of everything, and the witness of all that occurs. You are the Supreme Person, the origin of material nature and of the total material energy. You are also the owner of the material body. Therefore, you are the Supreme Complete. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please repeat. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the Supersoul, the superintendent of everything, and the witness of all that occurs. You are the Supreme Person, the origin of material nature and of the total material energy. You are also the owner of the material body. Therefore, you are the Supreme Complete. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Purport, Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita 13.3, the Lord says, Chetragyam chapimam vidi sarva chetrasu bharata. O son of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. Every one of us is thinking, I am this body, or this is my body. But actually, the truth is different. Our bodies are given to us by the Supreme Proprietor. The living entity, who is also Chetragya, or the knower of the body, is not the body's only proprietor. The actual proprietor of the body is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Chetragya. For example, we may rent or occupy a house, but actually the owner of the house is the landlord. Similarly, we may be allotted a certain type of body as a facility with which to enjoy this material world, but the actual proprietor of the body is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is called Sarvad Yaksha, because everything in the material world works under his supervision. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9.10, wherein the Lord says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sarachara sacharacharam. This material nature, working under my direction, O son of Kunti, is producing all moving and unmoving beings. From Prakriti, or material nature, come so many varieties of living entities, including aquatics, plants, trees, insects, birds, animals, human beings, and demigods. Prakriti is the mother, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the father. Aham bija pada pita, Bhagavad Gita 14:4. Prakriti can give us material bodies, but as spirit souls, we are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 15:7. Mamaivam so jiva loke, jiva bhuta sanatanaha. The living entity, being part and parcel of God, is not a product of this material world. Therefore, the Lord is described in this verse as Atma Mula, the source, the original source of everything. He is the seed of all existences. Bijamam sarvabhutanam, Bhagavad Gita 7:10. In Bhagavad Gita 14:4, the Lord says, Sarvayonishu kunteya murtaya sambhavanti yaha ta sambrahma mahadyonir aham bija padapitaha. It should be understood that all living entities in all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Plants, trees, insects, aquatics, demigods, beasts, birds, and all other living entities are sons or parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. But because they are struggling with different mentalities, they have been given different types of bodies. Manasastanindriyani prakristani karshyati. Bhagavad Gita 15:7. Thus they have become sons of Prakriti, or material nature, which is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Every living entity in this material world is struggling for existence, and the only salvation or relief from the cycle of birth and death in the evolutionary process is full surrender. This is indicated by the word Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Salakaya Chakshus Unmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamupakadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakopa Tubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitadam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So the verse again. Chetragyaya namastubhyam sarvaryakshaya sakshine purushayatma mulaya mula prakritaye namaha. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the super soul, the superintendent of everything, and the witness of all that occurs. You are the Supreme Person, the origin of material nature and of total material energy. You are also the owner of the material body. Therefore, you are the Supreme Complete. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. What beautiful prayers of surrender by Gaudacandra. So, it's interesting how they're entitled Prayers of Surrender. Actually, in order to surrender to someone, you must be aware of their supreme position. Just like if you're in the household and the father is a supreme person, if you respect the father and you are obedient to the father, then it's a happy household. That's surrender. So we have to recognize, oh, this is my father, he's in charge. So this is the fault of the impersonalists. They try to say that there's no person behind everything. There's no supreme controller. It's all impersonal. We're all one. When there's not a person, then they don't have to surrender. If there's a Supreme Person, oh, we have to surrender to that person. So they don't like that, so they like to just see it as all one. We're all one. To just merge into the Supreme. But that's not surrender. So here, Gajendra, it's amazing. These prayers like this, to actually understand the position of the Supreme Controller, is actually surrender. And that's pointed out in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 7th canto, where Prahlad Maharaj is preaching to his young demoniac friends and is explaining to them that the supreme cause of everything is Krishna. And Prabhupada writes in his purport that the supreme cause is Krishna, and devotees who have surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can realize him and his presence within the universe and within the atom. And Prabhupada quotes the Brahma Samhita for that. This realization is possible only for devotees who have fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Lord. For others, it is not possible. So then Prabhupada gives some more encouraging words. Prahlad Maharaj's class friends, who were born of Daitya families, thought that realizing the Absolute was extremely difficult. Indeed, we have experience that many people say this very thing. Actually, however, this is not so. The Absolute, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is most intimately related to all living entities. Therefore, if one understands the Vaishnava philosophy, which explains how he is present everywhere and how he acts everywhere, to worship the Supreme Lord or to realize him is not at all difficult. So let's see how Gajendra is seeing how Krishna is everywhere, is doing everything. So realization of the Lord, however, is possible only in the association of devotees. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his teachings to Rupa Goswami said, Brahmanda Brahmete Kone Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prashadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. The living entity in the material condition wanders through many varieties of life and many varieties of circumstances. But if he comes in contact with a pure devotee and is intelligent enough to take instructions from the pure devotee regarding the process of devotional service, he can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of Brahman and Paramatma, without difficulty. So here, Prabhupada ends this purport by saying, the Lord is present as Antaryami. This is actually quoted in this verse. In everyone's heart, and is visible to the individual soul covered by a body. Indeed, he is everywhere at every time and every condition. But because he is covered by the curtain of material energy, to an ordinary person, there appears to be no God. So this is that curtain, that we can actually penetrate that curtain if we get the association of a pure devotee. And so this is our whole process. It's the whole purpose of our life is to surrender to Krishna. And what happens when you surrender to Krishna? There's a nice quote from the Ramayana where Krishna says himself, if one surrenders unto me, sincerely saying, my Lord, from this day I am fully surrendered unto you, I always give him protection. That is my vow. So this is what you get, protection of Krishna. And this is what Gajendra did. He got protection from Krishna. Many devotees, we just read about in the previous verse, Manu, he was surrendered to Krishna, following the instructions, and he didn't even know he was in danger, and still Krishna protected him when the Rakshasas were attacking to kill him. So there's so many examples like this throughout these books. So Srila Prabhupada, throughout the purport, he quotes the Bhagavad Gita, and just with this train of thought, if you just follow it, you will get more and more enlightenment about his purport and what he's trying to express, and actually what Krishna is expressing. And it's all throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So he quotes 13:3 first of all here. So let's go there. That's the verse that says, O Sayana Bharta, You should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. So this is real knowledge, is to know the body, the knower, and there's two knowers in the body. And Prabhupada gives a very brilliant purport. And I just highlighted a few things that he mentions, which are very nice. So Prabhupada tried to impress the point that we should study this subject matter of the field of activity, the knower of the field, very minutely in terms of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is what real knowledge is. So we must understand it very minutely, he uses the word. And he gives some nice examples again, similar to what Prabhupada mentioned in this purport about the landlord. And Prabhupada mentions how a citizen, he may know everything about his patch of land that he knows. But the king, he not only knows that patch of land, but his own palace, but he knows all the different properties that he owns. All those properties that are possessed by all the individual citizens he's aware of. So similarly, we may be proprietor of this body, or sometimes it's called a field of activity, or a house, a home. But the Supreme Lord, he's the proprietor of all bodies. So just like the king, he's the original proprietor of the kingdom, and then the citizens, they're the secondary proprietor. So similarly, the Supreme Lord is a supreme proprietor of all bodies. We just have them on loan. We're just gifted them for a while. We're like renters. And just like he uses that example again, he's the original controller of the senses, which Prabhupada brought up in this purport too. And just as the king, he's also the original controller of all the activities of the state. And then the citizens, they're secondary controllers. So he gives them permission. They work underneath the king. So Prabhupada, there's one nice sentence here by Srila Prabhupada. To understand both the soul and the supersoul as one, yet distinct, is knowledge. One who does not understand the field of activity and the knower of activity is not in perfect knowledge. One has to understand the position of Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer of nature, and Ishvara, the knower, who dominates or controls nature and the individual soul. One should not confuse the three in their different capacities. One should not confuse the painter, the painting, and the easel. So these are all distinct. So this is a completely nullifying the Mayavadi conception that we're all one. So this is what we have to understand very minutely, Srila Prabhupada says. And how the body is always referred to as this chaitra. It's like a field. And just like a gardener, the farmer, he grows different seeds or different crops he gets crops according to different seeds that he plants. So the living entity, ourselves, we experience different fruits of happiness and distress according to our previous actions and our desires, which are like seeds. So a farmer, Prabhupada quotes here, the soul knows all about his own field, but the king, like the super soul in everyone's heart, is the ultimate controller and knower of each and every field in his kingdom. So again, that's just... So Prabhupada also brings up the point how we not only have to have the realization that I'm not this body, that actually constitutes enlightenment, he says, but this is actually born of goodness, and it's still insufficient to get liberation. So he says when this knowledge increases to include knowledge of the super soul, he becomes liberated. So that's the real Brahma Bhuta platform, is that you have to not only know that you're a spirit soul, but you have to also know the super soul. how he's everywhere. There's a nice analogy that used by one of the acharyas, I forget who this is, but he talks about how there's these village vultures. They eat the fruit of a tree, while the forest swans, they eat another kind of fruit. So one who by the grace of worshipable souls, again, bringing the importance of getting in touch with the pure devotee, then he can actually understand this tree. And he sees it as composed of Maya, and it appears in many forms, in the form of and this is actually the knower of the Vedas, this banyan tree that produces so many fruit. So he says here, the vultures in this verse refers to those who live outside the village. They're actually called vultures because they seize sense gratification. And they're like the conditioned jivas who eat one fruit of this tree. What is it called? Misery. That's the fruit. And then there's another let's say it says here that, but even if they attain heaven, their experience is ultimately miserable. But the swans living in the forest, however, are like liberated jivas. They eat the fruit of happiness. The complete enjoyment of liberation is derived from their experience. So this tree, it produces different forms of fruit. And it gives us the means to either attain hell or heaven. Liberation, whatever, like that. But by the grace of pure devotees, the worshipful spiritual masters, then we can actually understand this tree and what it's all about. So this is our ignorant perception. We're thinking that I have a particular body. We identify with the self as I'm a demigod, I'm a human being, I'm stout, I'm weak. All these different things, these are all just different types of illusion. But we have to become expert in knowledge and understand that this is just a field and you're the knower in that field. You're actually not these things. So those are the things that Prabhupada is referring to in that one verse of the Bhagavad Gita, 13.3. And then he quotes Bhagavad Gita 9.10, and that's the verse. It says, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So here Krishna's, again and again, he's bringing his supreme position. That's that verse, Maryakshena, which comes from Maya, which means my, and Adi means from above, and Aksha means to see. So it's like under my eyes, Krishna says, that everything's done under my supervision. He's the supervisor. So Srila Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur, he gives a nice analogy. He says the government business of a king, like Ambarish Maharaj, carried out by the ministers, the prakritis, while the uninvolved king merely remains present. At the same time, unless the king is present on his throne, the ministers are incapable of doing anything. In the same way, unless I give my support as a supervisor, material nature, prakriti, cannot do anything. So this is how Krishna does everything. It's nice. And it's just like the analogy also used is like there's a fragrant flower, and the fragrance is touched by the smell of the person. Yet the person and the flower, they're completely detached from one another. So that's a similar connection between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the material world is like that. So Prabhupada quoted the other Bhagavad Gita verse, 14.4. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. So here, who's our Father? Who's your daddy? Who's your father? This is Krishna. He's the father. He's the one that we have to surrender to. So this is the person that we need to actually learn about, respect. So this is a very nice verse and purport. Srila Prabhupada mentions there that the living entities, they're not only seen on this planet, but he's bringing the point that they're everywhere, on every planet, from high to low, from every species, animate, inanimate objects, atoms, everything is there. He's the seed father of everything. So this is Krishna. And then he quotes another Bhagavad Gita verse, 15:7. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So because we're fragmental parts of Krishna, then we also have his fragmental qualities. And independence is one of those. So by misuse of that independence, that's how we become covered by this material energy to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. And this is a word in this verse is karshati, which means struggling. So it's very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. And what is that shackle? It's like we're in this house, and in order to have a house, you need a foundation. So what's the foundation of this material house that we're living in right now? And that's the false ego. That's the foundation, as it's described. And so he says he's bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent, which is driving him in this material existence. So this is Prabhupada's talking about the mind and different modes of nature. So we have to come to the mode of goodness, and then our activities become less and less troublesome. So this is the power of the mind. It can determine your future. It's so powerful. And it just captivates you by this Maya. So to teach a living entity, rather than achieving pleasure, which Maya is tempting with, they're just forced to struggle in the material world. So we're going to struggle anyway, right? Life is a struggle. So why not struggle to be obedient to the Father? And then if you do, it's described, if you follow the instructions of the spiritual master, the pure devotee of Krishna, then you can be as happy as you can be possibly happy in this material world. But if you don't, then you'll struggle. So that's what our striving should be, as Prabhupada mentioned. We should very minutely try to study. We should take it up very much, very eagerly. There's another quote he says here. Prabhupada quotes here that we should understand that we should try to take that up. Because even this great manifestation that's by Krishna, it's going to come to an end. Even though it's huge, it may take a long time, but still it'll come to an end. And someone may think that, I like this situation, so I want to stay here. But no, you can't. Even if you like it here, you have to get out. You have to go. No. So there's one, Prabhupada used example of one dying man who's requesting the doctor, please, can you give me at least 4 more years? I've got so many plans, and I need to finish it. But Prabhupada says, actually, that's a demoniac mentality. Everyone thinks, I have to do this, I have to do that. And Prabhupada says here, no. The doctors or the doctor's father or his father, no scientist can check. Oh no, sir, no 4 years, not even 4 minutes. You have to go immediately. This is the law. So before that moment comes, one should be very dexterous to realize Krishna consciousness. Turnam yatena. Turna means very swiftly. Very quickly you should realize Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada says, next, before the next death comes, you must finish your business. That is intelligence. Otherwise, defeat. So this is the defeat of the material world. We have to become very intelligent, and we have to reawaken, just like the flame has the sparks. The sparks can reawaken its natural tendency to be a brilliant fire just by getting in contact with the air. So if we come in contact with the pure devotee, then we can revive that natural brilliance that we have. So Prabhupada quotes another verse here, but I'll just mention very quickly. This is just 7:10. O son of Partha, now that I am the original seed of all existences, the intelligence of the intelligent, and the prowess of all powerful men. So another again, he's confirming that he's the seed of all existences. And all these living entities, they're all within the scope of 8,400,000 species of life. And of 400,000 species, that's the human life, there's only a few that are civilized. Just because we have 2 legs and 2 arms doesn't make us civilized, because it could be a, what is it called? Dvipasu. Where does that go? That verb? Dvipadupasa. A 2-legged animal. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending doesn't make a human being, because animals could do it better than we can. But we have to take up Krishna consciousness and learn this very dexterously, very minutely, Prabhupada says. So that's it. Okay, so today happens to be the appearance day of Govinda Ghosh. And I'll just mention a few things about him. And this is why we honor pure devotees, because they're the examples to show us that you can have a personal relationship with Krishna. You can become purified where you can actually see and talk and interact with Krishna. So these devotees, and this is Govinda Ghosh in the time of Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna himself, came. We're able to interact with him, see him, and have personal relationships, intimate relationships with Krishna. And because we're all intimately related with Krishna, we just have to reawaken that. We have to do that. Okay, so Govinda Ghosh, he had 3 brothers. There was Govinda, Madhava, and Vasudeva. And there were actually 3 gopis in Braja. Govinda was Kalavati, Madhava was Rasolala, and Vasudeva was Gunatunga. And they used to sing songs composed by Vishaka as gopis. So these 3 brothers here in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, they were actually famed for their sweetness of their voices. It's described that there wasn't any singer on earth who was their equal. So it's very nice. So Nityananda used to dance to their singing. And they used to also do sweet kirtans during the Rath Yatra festival. So these 3 brothers, Govinda, Madhava, and Vasudeva, they were the 82nd, 83rd, and 84th branches of the tree, of Lord Chaitanya's tree. And this is where Lord Chaitanya again and Nityananda used to dance to their kirtans. They belong to the Kayasta family. And Govinda, he established the Gopinath temple in Agradweep. That's where he resided. So one day, there's a story here. After finishing his lunch, Lord Chaitanya looked for some mouth freshener, a fruit called haritaki. Govinda rushed to the village, collected some fruits, and offered one to the Lord. Upon receiving the fruit so promptly, Lord Chaitanya glanced inquisitively at Govinda. Understanding that Govinda had stored haritaki, Lord Chaitanya admonished him, saying, Govinda, since you have not been able to give up the habit of saving things, perhaps you had better stay back and take charge of installing the deity Gopinath. So he had to stay back. I mean, he was encouraged by Lord Chaitanya, but then he felt kind of miserable because he was left behind. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, this is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He says, it's not necessary for a Vaishnava to keep a stock of food for the next day. He should receive only sufficient grain to last one day. The next day he must again depend on the Lord's mercy. We should not materially calculate, thinking, it is better to stock food for a week. Why give the Lord trouble by having him bring food daily? One should be convinced that the Lord will provide daily. There is no need to stock food for the next day. So that's interesting. There's another devotee whose appearance day we just passed was Srivas Thakur. And I think wasn't it him that he was a grihasta, but he wouldn't work. He wouldn't do so many things, but he would just somehow or another get his food. So Lord Chaitanya said, why are you don't work, you don't do anything? And he says, what is your thing? And he's just clapped his hand 3 times. And he said, that if first day, third day, no food comes, then I jump in the Ganges. If Krishna doesn't bring anything, then. But he became very dear to Krishna, because even when his own son died, he didn't want to disturb Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya found out later, and he said, because of your such love, there's nothing I will not do for you. And anybody who even became dear to him became dear to Lord Chaitanya. It was a dog, a meat eater, so many people like that. Okay, so we'll end with this because it's getting late. So a few days later, he was taking a bath in the Ganges, and there was a floating object touched his back, and it appeared to be some sort of wood. Although it was considerably heavy, that night he received divine directions in a dream to preserve that piece of wood with care and to hand it over to Lord Chaitanya. When he arrived there, during the night when Govinda went to fetch the wood, he realized that it was a Krishna Shila. The next morning, Lord Chaitanya turned up in Govinda's house and said, look here, Govinda, you have nothing to worry about anymore. Tomorrow one sculptor will come here to chisel a deity from this Shila, and you should install that deity. The deity of Sri Gopinath was thus installed. So this is the end of the story here. It's very nice. So later, at the command of Lord Govinda, he married and continued to serve the deity with his wife. And then he was blessed with a son. But what happened is his wife and son, they passed away one after another. So then Govinda was deeply aggrieved and, the loss of his family. So then he stopped serving Gopinath, the deity. And then Krishna appeared to him in a dream and asked him, Govinda, do you think it's proper that when a person loses one son, he should starve the other son to death also? And then Govinda replied, it's my hope that had my son survived, he would have performed the necessary rituals in remembrance of my deceased soul and those of my forefathers. Tell me, what do I gain by serving you? Krishna explained, I hereby promise to celebrate your death anniversary in a fitting manner forever. Now please, can I have some food to eat? So Govinda was delighted to hear this and immediately returned to serving Gopinath. So in due course of time, when Govinda breathed his last, Gopinathaji held kusha grass in his fingers to perform such shraddha ceremony. A practice continued even today. So Govinda left word during the last moments of his life that his body should not be cremated, but should be buried under the ground near Dola Prangana. So that's Govinda Ghosh, is it appearance day or disappearance day? Disappearance day, I'm sorry. Okay, so sorry to keep you, but thank you for your kind attention. I'll go as Srimad Bhagavatam.
Master, what are the stories from Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Yeah, I get the stories from